Hey, try to point out the next storm that we're going to be talking about today on the screen. Is it this? Nope, that's just some unorganized showers and thunderstorms off of the coast of Africa. What about this? Actually, that's just some more unorganized showers and thunderstorms in the middle of the Atlantic. Surely it's this, right? Well, actually, most models don't have this area of thunderstorms forming, although I will admit there certainly is a decent amount of thunderstorm activity. We will be talking about this system in a little bit, but this is not our most likely next storm to develop. If you guessed this little tiny puff of smoke, little area of storm, then you were correct. As you can see, it doesn't really look like much is going on, but if we switch over to the natural color satellite here, you can definitely tell that there is some swirling happening out here, especially down here. You see that's kind of where the center of low pressure is. See some thunderstorms happening there on the north side. We got a lot of dry air and shear kind of keeping this storm from forming into anything right now. Going into the future, you can see that we do have some chances for this to develop. Over the next 2 days, it's about a 10% chance, so not a really high chance, but over the next 7 days, we have a 50% chance of this little swirly guy out there developing into a tropical depression or storm and tracking generally close to, areas like Puerto Rico, the Lesser Antilles, and also Dominican Republic and Haiti. This little flush of the toilet looking storm right now is generally not really a threat to anybody right now, but eventually it could try to form into something that could bring some flooding rain, maybe some damaging winds to some of the islands out there in the Caribbean. Further down the line, we really don't know what this storm is going to do, but we're going to be talking about this. And also, the United States. Can't forget about the United States here. And we are a United States channel after all. But as you can see, there's not a whole lot going on in terms of dangerous weather. Down the line, in about a week or so, we could be seeing a kind of a cutoff low trough bring back maybe a little bit more of an organized severe weather threat. So let's go ahead and start to break all of that down so you guys can be in the know on the weather. Let's get to it. So a little introduction into our Invest 94 L, which is the next storm that we're going to be talking about. See, it's not really that strong. Maximum winds around 25 knots. Kind of an unorganized, not a whole lot of showers and thunderstorms happening near the center of the storm. But since it is an Invest, we are starting to get our spaghetti model plots out. Spaghetti model plots are essentially what your mom cooks up in order to feed you at night, because she loves you. But, you throw that onto, a map, and that becomes where the hurricanes or tropical storms go. There's really no other science to it, like, super complicated math or AI algorithms controlling anything. It's all just your mom putting spaghetti on the map. But in all seriousness, these are model run scenarios that are going to be kind of showing us what this storm could do here. And as you can see, generally, most of the models are bringing this a little bit to the north of the Lesser Antilles. But again, this hasn't even formed yet, so I do think we're still going to see some shifts around. But you can see further on in its track, it's going to be getting closer and closer to the United States. So eventually, this might become a storm that the United States has to watch. But as you can see, 5 days out, this thing is still north of Cuba. It would probably still be another 3 to 4, maybe even 5 days before this thing would bring any sort of impacts into the United States whatsoever, if that does end up being a possibility. So definitely not a storm to like freak out or hyper focus on, but I do just want to come in here and show you guys, a little bit about it. Coming over to the intensity guidance, right around, it looks like when this thing is north of the Lesser Antilles and then over there kind of north of Puerto Rico as well, you can see that this thing is generally going to strengthen, potentially could become a tropical storm over the next 2 days, but it looks like the most likely scenario is that it becomes a tropical storm over the next 3 days. And you can see that we do have a lot of models in the tropical storm area, a couple in the Category 1 hurricane area, so can't truly rule out a Category 1 hurricane with this storm. But if the model tracks are staying true, this will still be over the ocean at this point. We got to watch to see if we get any southern shift for the islands out there in the Caribbean. But for right now, the intensity is not super bullish on this storm. I don't think we're going to be talking about another super major hurricane, storm of the century type storm like we had with Milton, at least in the Gulf of Mexico. But definitely, worth watching, especially as it tries to nudge a little bit closer to the United States. Now, if we come over here to the graphical outlook here over the next, 2 to 7 days from the National Hurricane Center. You can see over the next 2 days, there is just nothing out there in the Caribbean with that cluster of showers. A lot of people have been hyping up this storm, saying it's going to be the next big one for the United States. There was one model ensemble that was saying that. No other models were picking up on that, and I really don't feel like people have been doing a good job communicating that fact, and that's why the National Hurricane Center still has nothing there. There's no agreement on the models. If something's actually going to form, almost every single time all of the models come together and they at least show something. But the EPS, some of our other ensembles, some of our other deterministic runs haven't even showed anything in the Caribbean, which is why there's not an area of interest down there. So the GEFS, and you could essentially just say it's your drunk uncle kind of spewing nonsense right now, and everybody else like the EPS and the Canadian models are all looking at the the GEFS, thinking to each other like, maybe we should do an intervention or something. The GEFS is off its rocker yet again. It happens quite a lot. You'd be surprised on that. Sometimes it picks up some signals early, but for now, it is still an outcast. So I'm going to be honest, until we get some sort of agreement in the models, I'm just not even going to talk about this storm. Best thing to do when talking about 94L, the invest area that we were talking about at the beginning of the video, trying to find it and all that kind of stuff, are kind of a flush of a toilet type of storm out there. Not a whole lot of convection, just looks like a little swirl in the ocean. But, the best thing to do to kind of determine what the possibilities are, the scenarios are with the storm, especially with not a whole lot of data, we don't have any Hurricane Hunter planes out there giving us data to feed in these models, is to look at some of these ensemble models. And so if I push this forward, like I'm Isaac Newton trying to prove gravity exists, we can see that, not a whole lot shows up in the short term. As we start to get into early morning on Friday, we start to see some of ensembles pop up here on the Euro ensemble model. But look, we don't really have a whole lot of them forming into much. We got a really large spread with this model as well. Maybe a tropical storm up there, maybe some tropical depression, could be all the way up to the north here, or all the way down tracking into like the Haiti and Dominican Republic area. So not a whole lot of certainty in the track beyond the Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico, but there is some consensus here, at least on the EPS, that something could form. Now looking at the GEFS, it's still a little bit bullish on this storm forming down here in the Caribbean. Again, it's the only one. The Euro, I didn't even talk about anything on the Euro down there because there really wasn't even much, but it's still kind of bullish on this storm. But for the most part, it brings it in to Mexico, and it's a non-story. I will say there is one or two ensembles that tries to bring it up a little bit further north and then eventually into the Gulf of Mexico. But keep in mind, when these ensembles do their runs, they do 30 runs. So this one little signal out of 30, that brings it at about a 1 to 2% chance or 3% chance of that happening. Really low end scenario. Most of the ensembles, if it does form anything, does bring it into Mexico. I think that's the most likely scenario with this. Not worried about this little system, this cluster of showers and thunderstorms in the Caribbean. We just have too strong of a high pressure up in the United States that's going to be really protecting everybody from any kind of storm. You can see we even have a decent amount of model ensemble support for that to stick around kind of in that general area of Virginia to North Carolina. So really not worried about this storm at all for now. But, hey, sometimes the models change. If they do, we'll talk about it. But overall, back over here on that system that we were talking about, as we push this further into the future, you can see the GEFS is not really bullish about this storm whatsoever. It shows nothing. Now, the GEPS ensembles, they are also kind of picking up on this storm. So that's two models saying maybe a tropical storm or depression is possible, maybe pushing up into the Bahamas at some point, and then further down the line, it looks like, it just goes into a little bit less favorable environment, and we really don't see much ensemble support there. So, what I would say for the one in the Caribbean, really no confidence about this one. The one up here that's eventually tracked north of the Lesser Antilles, or maybe over the Lesser Antilles, we could still get some track changes. I just don't have a lot of confidence of it even forming in the first place. We don't really have a lot of ensemble support for that. So, I think it's something to watch, but even if it does form, it seems like most of the models are indicating that this will be a little bit of a weaker storm. So we'll have to see. But next, what we're going to do here is go look a little bit further into the future for the United States and see if we see any definite signals of storminess on the horizon. We kind of zoom out here and look at it our jet stream, it'll give us a little bit of an understanding of what the troughs are going to do out there. And you can see generally we're going to have high pressure in the west, this low pressure system in the east coast, bringing those cooler temperatures down. And then eventually we're going to have more of a high pressure system push into the central United States. And that's going to kind of meander off to the east. And then eventually you see this as we go into the 18th, we could have a little bit of a kind of bowling ball trough move in. And then eventually it could become a cutoff low. And that's going to bring some wind shear down into the plains again. But look, it just kind of meanders here in kind of an unfavorable area for severe weather as it's kind of at its peak and then eventually gets elongated. And as it gets elongated and kind of ejects off to the north, we could generally still have some decent shear values out there, maybe for some spin in the atmosphere. So let's kind of look at our lower level shear at this time. There could be a decent amount all the way across the plains going into the 20th, 21st here overnight on the 20th into the 21st. So definitely could be some spin in there. Let's go look at another thing that's important for severe weather, which is moisture and energy in the atmosphere. Yeah, again, this is going to be the big problem here, folks. This is going to be the big problem in terms of these storms actually being able to form is going to be that instability. There's just not a whole lot. Maybe we can get some pockets in some areas, and there could be a tornado threat in those regions. Really not looking like much for the northern portion. Maybe some thunderstorms and severe weather still possible up there, but looks like most of the severe weather is going to be hanging down here, coming back into Kansas and Oklahoma and parts of Texas, as we are starting to get enough energy for these storms kind of make its way into the region as we get into the 21st. Let's go look at the 20th here really quick, see how close we get to this actually, bringing any decent moisture. Yeah, it looks like most of that moisture is hanging back down here in New Mexico, and that energy as well. That could change. I mean, there is a little bit of an axis here. So, maybe going into the 20th to the 21st, we could see some potential for some severe weather to kind of work its way back into the United States. But this is pretty far out with severe weather. You typically want to wait until that 3-day range to get really any accuracy. So we'll see what ends up happening. It's on the radar. We'll keep an eye on it. But this is well far in the future. And I don't think anybody should be worried about this just yet until we get some certainty. But all right, now we're going to be breaking down the four corners of the United States. First, starting off with the Northeast and the Ohio Valley, a little bit up here, also in the northern plains as well. So you can see we have this little trough that's going to be coming down, bringing some cooler temperatures over the next 2 days, but also some rain. We could get a lot of rain or a decent amount of rain, a couple of inches. I wouldn't say a lot, but a couple of inches over there near parts of New York, going into parts of the Northeast as well. Some rain over there in northern, maybe even some thunderstorms over there in northern Wisconsin and over into the Yucatan Peninsula. And this is mainly going to be going into, later today. That's when that rain is going to happen. And as we move into tomorrow, you can see we got some itty bitty bitsy spiders of showers happening over here near Chicago, over there near Cleveland. Watch out for some waterspouts out there. Still technically possible. The Great Lakes are a little bit warm, but we'll see if that ends up really happening. I think the coolest part of this storm, or I guess, well, no pun intended there, but yeah, the coolest part of this storm, or the most interesting part of this little system coming into the Northeast is going to be that snowfall potentially up in the upper elevations there in New York, going into Vermont, New Hampshire, and also Maine as well. Kind of in the northern portions, in higher elevations, could see some snow. Also, all the way up there in the UP of Michigan and Wisconsin as well. Could see some little bit of a squall line there of some snow showers, and then it kind of moves down to the south and east, bringing those cooler temperatures. Maybe some spotty lake effect snow coming off of the Great Lakes region as well as with that lane. That as that continues, you can see we still get some decent little bands here, at least indicated by the HRRR, of some lake effect snow for the higher elevations, mainly there in kind of southern New York, going all the way up into Maine. Here's our forecast for snow over the next couple of days, and as you can see, maybe some dustings up there in the UP of Michigan, maybe some slight dustings every now and then up there in northern Michigan. But the main areas that we're going to be talking about are some of these higher elevations over here in New York and Vermont, where we could actually be getting a decent amount of snow, anywhere from 9 inches there on the highest parts of the peak. And the further you go down in elevation, the lower the snow is going to, the lower the amounts of snow are going to get. So just be keeping your eye out there, especially on the tops of these little peaks over here south and east of Cornwall. Also, in the Vermont mountains, could start to see, anywhere from, on the peaks of the mountains, anywhere from, 6 to 9 inches being possible there, 4 to 5 inches being possible over here in some of the peaks in higher elevations in New Hampshire. And then on the northern portions of Maine, could see anywhere from a dusting to an inch or 2. Now, down into the southeast, looking at future radar in terms of rain, just really not seeing a whole lot. Maybe some rain over there, kind of in like the panhandle of Florida, some very light rain being possible, but no major thunderstorms or really anything until, about the 16th at 1 a.m. Could see some thunderstorms return back there for near Orlando and Tampa. Hopefully, the folks down there are able to get the alert out to the folks that are still cleaning up down there. But overall, this trop's going to be moving in with some cooler temperatures. Let's talk about that. As you can see, it's going to be generally cooler in the northern portions of the southeast, going into Arkansas and southern Missouri, with some 50s and 40s expected there. And then as we move overnight, you can see those cooler temperatures start to dive down. We have, anywhere from 40s. We're starting to see those 40s return in the nighttime here for northern Georgia, even going into North and South Carolina, Virginia, parts of Tennessee, Missouri as well. And then as we go into the peak heating hours of the next day, that cold air really isn't going to retreat too much. We are going to start to see, the warmer temperatures return over there near Louisiana. Parts of eastern Texas as well are going to be getting into some of those warmer temperatures. Also, the eastern portion of Oklahoma, southern Arkansas, Florida, still a little bit hot and humid down there. But then we're going to get another push of some colder air reach down, and take a look at this. Potentially getting into the 30s there for parts of, Tennessee, over there, northern Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. Those 40s making it almost all the way down into some parts of Florida there. Also, Arkansas, Oklahoma getting in on some of those cooler temperatures in northeastern Texas as well. So, pretty cool out there, for a lot of folks. The weather is putting on some shades and is break dancing out there, really trying to show off just how cool it can be. And yeah, so definitely that is some enjoyable relief, I guess, from the heat if you are getting annoyed at it. Now, looking off to the western portion of the United States here, you can see that, we're just not seeing a whole lot of rain, maybe some showers and thunderstorms over there near New Mexico and also Arizona as well. As this pushes off to the east, you can see that some rain and showers are going to be possible over there in the northwest coast there. So just be watching out for that. But that's really all there is over the next 2 days of really anything that could be possible in terms of rain or thunderstorms. Now, in terms of temperatures, overnight it's going to be pretty cool. Then as we get into the next days, you can see that heat is still going to be continuing to build in for parts of Texas, going all the way up into Montana, a little corridor of 80s and 70s still over in Phoenix. Still pretty hot over there in southern Arizona, going into California. So the heat's going to continue to kind of hold on here for a lot of folks across the United States. As we go into the overnight hours, the upper elevations are going to continue to kind of be cooler than the lower elevations, of course, but we are generally going to be getting cooler at night here for the west coast or the western portion of the United States. Take a look over here near North Dakota, though, and South Dakota, getting down into those 26-degree temperatures. So it's going to be nice and brisk up there. Also in parts of Minnesota and going into Iowa as well, and Nebraska could be getting into some of those really cool temperatures there, below freezing temperatures. So some frost alerts could start to be issued as early as tomorrow morning out there. So watch out for that. Pushing this into the next day, a little bit cooler, 60s and 70s across most of the west coast, some 50s out there as well in the higher elevations. Still, the heat's hanging on down there in Arizona, going into California and parts of Texas as well. And then as it cools down into the later nights or later into the night, you can see that colder pocket of air meanders a little bit further down to the south and east, going into parts of Wisconsin and Illinois as well. Iowa getting in, a large portion of Iowa getting in on some of those really cold, or not really cold, but colder temperatures. Really cold compared to what we have been dealing with over the summer. Talking about below freezing for a lot of folks out there, and generally cooler across most of the west coast, anywhere from 40s to 30s being possible for most folks, unless you live on the very low elevations. You could be still in the 60 to 50 range. But for the most part, I think the general story here is that the United States is going to be quieter than a mouse fart. It's just really not going to be so much happening here and there. Maybe a little bit of snow, maybe a little bit of colder temperatures. Going to be the main story. And then we got some stuff trying to happen out in the Atlantic. But, honestly, I don't really see anything on my radar, at least in the short term, for some big time weather. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.